Dr. Khan, thank you for inviting me, and the organizers. Last time I spoke to this group was May 4th, 2019. And I know it was May 4th, 2019, because I thought it was May 5th, 2019. And I figured I was going to drive home after the lecture, so I wouldn't have a chance to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. So I said, let me get some tequila at the bar before I give my lecture, just hanging out waiting. So I'm sitting there having a sip of tequila before my lecture on May 4th, thinking it's May 5th. And people are kind of looking at me like, okay, what's this doctor doing? And when I drove home, I realized, hey, it's May 4th, it's not May 5th. What was I doing? And then I kept thinking for the last 2 years, almost 2 years, what do the people here think about me? That I was drinking before my lecture on May 4th, thinking it was May 5th. And I found out when I got to my room, they actually gave me a set of shot glasses. Little travel-sized shot glasses they gave me. And I never knew this existed, but I have travel-sized shot glasses now. And they gave me some whiskey, too. So I'll show you that. It's right here. So if you want to join me, I figured I might as well just have a drink with you guys now, if it's okay. We'll do that now. And I have 4 shot glasses, guys, so you can even join me, you can. But here's to you, Dr. Khan, and to all of you. Thank you for having me here today. So let's talk about sleep. We all do it. We've all been sleeping longer than any other activity you do, by the way. It's sleeping longer than you've been breathing oxygen. You've been sleeping longer than you've eaten any food. You're all sleeping in utero. Anyway, we've got little 4 shot glasses here, right? So I was thinking, the folks are so nice. When I got up this morning, I was thinking, I need to try to really update the talk and give you new information about sleep. So first thing we can talk about is the pandemic. How does it affect our sleep? So here's some data for you. Sleep definitely influences our immune system. One of the first things that happens when people get sick is they want to sleep. Why does that happen? There's a mechanism behind this. And if you don't get enough sleep, one of the first things that happens is you tend to get more colds. When you travel, you get colds a lot. Lack of sleep lowers your natural killer cell activity. It's actually causality. It's not association, because there's animal research on the immune system showing how lack of sleep is affected, how lack of sleep affects our immune system. And actually, now we're talking about immunizations. Not getting enough sleep lowers your immune response. They've actually done this experiment. They've actually done this. This is an old study, way before we ever had a pandemic, where people on purpose, volunteers, accepted getting the cold virus, a rhinovirus, in their noses, and they would sleep deprive them. And if you were sleep deprived, you were more likely to catch a cold when you got the rhinovirus voluntarily introduced to your nose. So getting sleep is actually a good thing, obviously. In fact, sleep is the ultimate form of self-care. One of the earliest sleep scientists said if sleep has no function, it's the biggest mistake evolution ever made. There should be no doubt that sleep is necessary for life. And what happens is our body defends itself. Our body have co-evolved ways of protecting our ability to be safe and sleep at the same time. If you accept the fact that sleep is inherently dangerous and that we have to do it for reasons that are not entirely clear, but we'll talk about it as we move on, then you also have to understand that there are ways of protecting ourselves while we sleep. All animals that have been studied sleep to some degree, and all of them have evolved ways to protect themselves as they sleep, and we're no exception. So today I figured to focus on insomnia and sleep apnea, but there are other sleep disorders we could discuss if you wanted to. So with any lecture, the first thing people want to know is, well, what's new? What have I learned? You're spending the afternoon, right? What's the point of being here? What did you learn? So at least with sleep, 4 new medications since I was here last time. I have no financial connections to any of these companies. I have no conflicts to disclose. But we have to talk a little about these products. So first, the generic name is always this mouthful. Soframfetol. The brand name is Sunosi, there. And that's medication to help you stay awake. It's a dopamine norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, similar to Wellbutrin. And you're saying, well, what am I going to prescribe this for? Because you think, well, it's narcolepsy, when am I going to see that? But narcolepsy is fairly common. But it's also approved as an adjunct for sleep apnea. A lot of patients with sleep apnea have residual sleepiness. And we know this from the days when we used to do tracheostomies. When the ultimate cure for sleep apnea is put a hole in somebody's neck and bypass the obstruction. And even some of those patients who got the trachs still had sleepiness afterwards. They felt much better. You reverse the cardiovascular comorbidities of sleep apnea by doing a trach, but some of them remain sleepy. So you can't prescribe medication for them. And that's an example of one of them. Now there's 2 approved now. The other one is modafinil, and now we have this new one, soframfetol. The other new medication is pitolisant. It's a funny name, Wakix. And that's actually a histamine agonist. The way you learn it is antihistamines make you sleepy. Histamine is alerting. Histamine is released by the tubular mammillary nucleus. What happens during normal sleep? During normal sleep, some of you have trouble falling asleep, some people have trouble staying asleep. Trouble staying asleep, in part, our body starts secreting more histamine. Histamine is an alerting substance, and in the second half of the night, the body starts making histamine, anticipating the awakening the next day. So pitolisant is mimicking that pattern of giving you more histamine to make you more alert. For sleep, there's a new one called Dayvigo. Dayvigo is most of the hypnotics that you talked about over the years have worked through the GABA system, things like zolpidem, zolaplam, any of the benzos that you can think of all work through GABA. This is different. This is working through a different system. And again, an alerting substance in our body is a neuropeptide called orexin, also called hypocretin. So if you block orexin, if you block hypocretin, people get sleepy. So this is a sleep-promoting agent that's working through orexin, dual receptor antagonist, lumborexant. It's similar to another one that's already out there you may have heard of, called suvorexant. That's Belsamra. So now we have two in this dual orexin receptor antagonist category. The mnemonic, the acronym they call them is DORAs, like the character of the cartoon, DORAs. So we have two DORAs, Dayvigo and Belsamra, the brand names. So the new one is lumborexant. What about suvorexant? Well, suvorexant came around, did something that I had never seen happen before. They actually got an FDA indication for the insomnia associated with Alzheimer's disease, which is kind of interesting, right? They're saying that insomnia is somehow different than other forms of insomnia. May or may not be true, but it's good to know that there is a medication specifically for people with Alzheimer's who can't sleep, because a reason that people get institutionalized is when caretakers can no longer take care of their loved ones because they're wandering around at night. And the fear in the past of using a benzo, some of you nodding your heads, you guys know that some of you have probably been in that sandwich situation generationally where you have loved ones and family members. We don't necessarily love all our family members, but in general, we like them, all right? But family members are loved ones who have insomnia, and they're wandering around the house and getting in danger. And the problem in the past is if you gave them a benzodiazepine, they could trip and fall and break a hip. And then things get really, really bad. So now there's a medication that's been approved for the insomnia specifically of Alzheimer's. It's called suvorexant. And finally, for cardiologists may be interested, one of the more powerful agents to help you fall asleep is sodium oxybate. And it's used to help people with narcolepsy help them sleep deeper. And the brand name is Xyrem. But sodium is sodium oxybate. And the problem with sodium oxybate is it's a big sodium load. Patients say it's like drinking seawater. So now they've come up with a low sodium version. Y-Wave is called? That's it anyway. Yeah, so that's new. So if you did want to fall asleep in my talk, now you can because I already got over what's new. The symbol for sleep medicine is this yin and yang symbol. When the field of sleep began in 1970, that was the symbol that was chosen to represent our field. Day-night cycle. That's officially like on my board certification, anything, all my training stuff always has that yin and yang on it. And it's what the elders came up with to represent the field of sleep. Because we think about the day-night cycle, how it interacts with each other, sleep-wake cycle. But I've taken it to mean that in sleep medicine, we don't separate the mind from the brain. The mind and brain go together. People often say things to me like, I can't turn off my brain, that's why I can't sleep. Well, your brain's not meant to be turned off, right? It's not meant to be turned off. In fact, the sleeping brain is actually very vigilant to the outside world to protect you while you're sleeping. So from that idea, I always come up with the saying that your life reflects on your sleep reflects on your life. If you want to help somebody sleep better, you need to know how they live their lives. It just goes together. You cannot take care of somebody's sleep unless you understand how they live their lives. It's crucial. Somebody's a shift worker. Somebody's got little kids to take care of. Somebody has other relatives. Somebody's working 2 jobs. Somebody's different schedule weekends and weekdays. You got to get into all that if you want to help somebody sleep better. Finally, you should not routinely wake up feeling tired. None of you should ever wake up tired. If you wake up tired, something is wrong. You don't leave restaurants feeling hungry. Why should you wake up feeling tired? Makes no sense. You should not equate tiredness with sleepiness either. If we did 100 jumping jacks together, assuming I could do 100 jumping jacks, you will feel tired. You're not going to feel sleepy. It's not the same thing. That's why when patients tell you things like, I have to get myself tired to go to sleep. Well, that's nonsense. You will sleep whether you're tired or not. In fact, if you sit on an airplane for hours, you haven't gone anywhere, done anything, you'll still have a cycle of wake and sleep, whether you're doing any exercise. So you cannot equate tiredness and sleep. It's not the same thing. But you should not wake up feeling tired. If somebody tells you that they're tired no matter how much sleep they get, that for me is a hard stop. That means I have to measure their sleep. That's when I will order a sleep study. But you cannot equate sleep study with sleep medicine. It's not the same thing. Now, as far as, didn't come out too well, this slide. I'm sorry. I was trying to tweak it. But the key thing here is we all know that there are different types of sleep. Our entire lives, since we were conceived pretty much, before you were born, your entire life has either been awake, you've been dreaming, or sleeping but not dreaming. And that's all you do. The three states the brain is in. You're either awake, REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, or non-REM sleep. That's all we do. And the non-REM sleep is divided into 3 stages. Now, it used to be 4, now it's only 3. Light, intermediate, and deep sleep. And each one of them has particular features to them. If I look at somebody's brain waves only, I can't tell whether you're awake or dreaming. Dreaming and awake have the same brain waves. There are other things that make them different, other parameters you have to look at. But just looking at your brain waves, being awake and dreaming is the same. Really hard to tell them apart. Now, there's a common misconception people have. And people say, well, I wake up at night. I wake up 4 times. I woke up twice last night. I woke up several times. All of us wake up a lot. Nobody in this room has ever slept through the night. You never have, you never will. Humans do not sleep 8 hours in a row. All humans, at the end of every sleep cycle, briefly wake up, look around, make sure everything's okay, and we go back to sleep. Stay awake and watch somebody sleep. Stay awake. Just watch somebody sleep. Nobody sleeps 8 hours in a row. At the end of every REM cycle, because we're paralyzed in REM, when we change positions, our eyes open up. We look around, back to sleep. Nothing to think about, nothing to process, you go back to sleep. So when somebody complains to me that they have trouble because they wake up at night, that's not the issue. The issue is whether you remember, why can't you go back to sleep? Why are you aware of your awakenings? Because we have major awakenings about every 90 minutes. 1 to 2 hours is the cycle, but roughly about every 90 minutes. And about 10 times per hour, we have a little burst of brainwaves, lasts about 3 seconds, that look like we're awake. We're always sampling our surroundings. We have to. Sleeping is the most dangerous thing we do. We have to check out our environment. And in a tribe of people, different sleep patterns emerge that are protective of the group. So when people go into adolescence, teenagers, they sleep very, very deeply. But they also shift biologically to sleep later at night. So it's actually kind of cool. We have a group of people who are strong and healthy, who are set up to keep an eye on the fire, who stay up at night. That's biological. Other animals, other primates, also will shift to later sleep cycles when they go through puberty. That's balanced by people over age 50 having a harder time going to sleep late. We tend to now, most of us, I'm 58, prefer to go to sleep a little earlier than we used to. It's a little bit different. And ladies, how many of you sleep well after you went through menopause? Is that a problem for some of you, right? So there is some speculation that actually that was also protective of the herd, that the grandmother takes on a role of watching over the group at night. You may not like your role, you may not have, been happy with that, but there are other animals when you can't reproduce, you just die off, and there you have a role, so it's been a good thing. So there's something to this. But definitely different patterns of sleep in different folks. Actually, the whole idea of us getting older, going to sleep earlier, may not just be genetic. It may be a part of cataracts. Actually, we have less light coming into our eyes, and that's also maybe a factor. So there's some data that if you have cataract surgery, your sleep cycle will change because you have more light coming into your retina. So I mentioned this before. You cannot equate sleep medicine with sleep studies. You have to get a sleep history. And whenever I talk to any patient, the first time I meet a patient, if I talk to any one of you about your sleep, there's 4 things I want to know. I want to know about the amount of sleep. That's the most obvious. How much sleep do you get? I want to know your sleep on weekends, weekdays, days off, holidays. I want to know your different amounts of sleep you get. But there's some people who say, no matter how much sleep I get, I'm tired. So that's the quality of the sleep. I need to know that, too. Is your sleep refreshing or not? What else? The timing. The circadian factors. You shift work, or do you break up your sleep into 2 pieces or 3 pieces? Some of you work nights, and you regulate your sleep that way. A lot of you are nurses and people who do night work. So amount of sleep, quality of sleep, timing of sleep. What's the 4th element to anybody's sleep story? Your state of mind. Are you looking forward to sleeping? Is sleeping a hassle? Right? What does sleeping mean to you? Sleeping mean that I get a break from my life, or sleeping that I have to do, and I got 5.2 hours left to do, and I've got to take care of this and take care of that, and if I don't get my sleep, tomorrow's going to be a bad day. Are you looking forward to tomorrow? Or are you dreading tomorrow? Do you look at your bed? One of the features of chronic insomniacs is that when they get into their bed, well, actually, they're drowsy in another part of the house. In the living room, some other part of the home, and they're getting drowsy, they're yawning. They get into bed, boom, wide awake. The thought of sleeping is waking you up. That's not good. And that's a real feature of chronic insomniacs, where the thought of sleeping wakes them up. Because sleep is no longer a natural process, but a problem to be solved. Do I take a pill or do I not take a pill? Do I take 2 pills and get it over with? What if I run out of refills? Do I take half a pill? Do I leave a pill by the bedside and get it later? What am I going to do? The pharmacist looks at me funny every time I get a refill. What am I going to do? What can I get instead? The need for sleep is biological, but the way you sleep is learned. Sleeping is a learned behavior in the end. It's a lot like food. The need for food is biological, but what you eat is cultural. It's easy to prove that sleeping is a learned behavior. All of you have bed partners. All of you have significant others. Remember the first night you shared a bed with that person? One of you chose a side of the bed, the other one was just happy to be there and took whatever side was left, right? That's what happened. But henceforth, it was never discussed anymore who was going to sleep where. That's your side, that's my side. When you travel, you go somewhere, you just put your stuff on the side of the bed where it belongs to. The exception we talked about last night is people who want to go to the bathroom more often at night, then they'll switch sides that night only. But other than that, people stick to their sides. It's a learned behavior. And in fact, if you've been sleeping with somebody for a long time and that person's not there, that night you still sleep on your side. If you move over to the other person's side of the bed, that's viewed as an invasion of their privacy, right? If you find your significant other's been on your side of the bed, what were you doing there? Why were you there? Right? There's accusations go about this. Why did you do that? And if you don't believe me and you sleep alone, simply rotate your body and put your feet where your pillow normally goes. Rotate your body in the bed and see how you feel. Same bed, same mattress, same room, same everything. You feel very strange simply rotating your body in the bed. So there should be no doubt that sleeping is a learned behavior. Despite the fact you've been doing it since before you were born, it's now a learned behavior, which also means you can learn to sleep differently. A corollary to this is what wakes you up and what's keeping you awake. You may wake up because you have to go urinate, but then you stay awake for other reasons. Let's say it's a perfect night for sleeping. Everything is just right. Perfect night. You're with your significant other. You're about to drift off to sleep, and you turn to that person and you say to them, honey, did you lock the front door? You turn off the stove. And your partner says to you, I think so. Only 3 things will occur then. You're going to get up and go check. You're going to make your partner get up and go check. Or as you're about to go check, your partner says to you, no, you worry too much. I'm pretty sure I turned off the stove. I'm almost positive I locked the front door. Keep me company. It's cold. Stay here with me. What's going to happen? You will fall asleep. You cannot stop your brain from sleeping. You will sleep anywhere. People say all kinds of things like, I can't sleep without X or Y. That's nonsense. You'll sleep in any situation. You'll sleep on Highway 5 if you're sleepy enough. Lay down on the highway. Right? You cannot deny this biological need for sleep. So you will eventually fall asleep under that circumstance. But after 2 or 3 hours, you're going to pop awake and go check the front door and go check the stove. You'll see that the stove was off and the door was locked. You were safe and fine the whole time. But you weren't sure when you went to bed. So people who wake up in the middle of the night often have unresolved things in the back of their mind. So waking up is not the issue. It's staying awake because unresolved things in the back of your mind. And the door was locked, the stove was off, and there was never a problem. You can have the opposite situation. You may wake up one morning, the birds are chirping, it's a beautiful morning, everything's just right, you're happy to be alive. You go to the front of your house, you see the front door was left wide open. Not unlocked, it was left open. You were never safe, but you thought you were, and you slept just fine. That's why your state of mind is important when you consider any of these sleep issues. You have to ask people, how do they feel about sleeping? People with hardcore insomnia, that's a horrible thing to go through. They have it for decades. I just saw an 86-year-old who had it since she was in her 20s. We finally got her sleep fixed, and she's so happy. So you can fix anybody's sleep. If you've ever slept well, your ability to sleep remains intact for the most part. Neurologically, it's hard to destroy the parts of the brain that deal with sleep. What happens is people go into sleep modes for survival. And that's why they're staying awake, because they're sleeping as light as possible. The brain is set up to sleep as lightly as possible when it thinks something is wrong. I've talked a little bit about this already. To our brain's long-term danger is the same thing as chronic stress. If you're in danger, immediate danger, somebody yells fire, no matter how drowsy you may be right now, somebody yells fire, you're going to get up and go and get out of here, right? And you sleep great in a state of serenity. What about long-term danger? In long-term danger, the brain will still sleep, but in spurts, as lightly as possible. And that's what happens when people have chronic insomnia. They're sleeping in a different mode, which is the system that was set up to sleep when something is not right. You'll have patients who describe to you horrific personal situations that they're going through. Chronic pain, illness in the family, loss of jobs. You've heard lots of stories during the pandemic. And then they say, but I just can't sleep. I'm like, well, it'd be weird if you were sleeping fine, given the circumstances that you're in right now. The question is, can you learn to put your problems aside, take care of them, and go to sleep, and know that you've done the best you can tonight, and tomorrow you have another day. That's how you approach it. But that's not an easy thing to do. It's something you can learn to do, though. Famous people have had insomnia. The concept of sleep hygiene often does not work. It's not enough for most people to sleep better. But what does work is kind of behavioral therapy. I can talk to you about that a little bit. But sleep hygiene is just general ideas for everybody, how to sleep better, good tips. It's like telling somebody with anxiety, don't worry. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't help. You have to understand how to channel this. Hypnotics we can talk about. I mentioned already some new medications. There is reviews of the science behind this. Our journal in sleep medicine, our main journal, Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine, JCSM, 2017, put out a review of all the evidence-based data supporting hypnotics. And pretty much none of the medications have strong evidence one way or the other, because a lot of the trials are, similar in cardiology, are sponsored by industry, and that often gets nixed as weak evidence. But the medications that were evidence was supporting are those on the list right there: suvorexant, azobiclone, xalapon, things you're familiar with, Romaltion, doxepin. But what's not found to be effective as far as evidence? Trazodone. How many of you seen people with trazodone? Not a single person. No evidence supporting its use. If you look at the trials for sleep, not for depression, it was equal to placebo after 2 weeks at 50 milligrams. I'm not saying you have to ditch your trazodone. I'm saying that there's not solid evidence that it works. Same thing with diphenhydramine, melatonin, tryptophan, valerian. The thing with sleep is that everything works in the beginning. Everything works. Look at the package insert of any of these substances, any one of them. One of the things you'll see in the package insert is when they compare the randomized trials, every single one of these, the placebo group gets a hangover. Why does the placebo group get a hangover? Because who volunteers for a research trial for a sleeping pill? Somebody with insomnia who's not happy with whatever they were getting. If you're sleeping fine with something, you're not going to volunteer to give it up to go on this trial. So everybody who volunteers for the trial is sleeping poorly to begin with. And nobody volunteers to get placebo. You volunteer because you're hoping to get the active agent. So when you get randomized, in your mind, you think that the person who gave you that pill smiled at you, winked at you, whatever you think happened. They think, oh, I got the good stuff. I'm finally going to get things. And also there's a washout period, so there's a period of time without any medication. You finally get something. You've been waiting for the day to get randomized. You finally get something. And you go, I must have got the good stuff. So now I sleep better than before, because now my hypervigilance, my anxiety about sleep is lower because I finally got something. The next morning I feel fuzzy because I overslept more than before on placebo. What am I thinking? Hooray, I got the active agent. And now I'm going to keep taking the stuff because I got the good stuff. And then, for example, the trazodone, I saw some of you kind of react to the fact that trazodone is on this. When you look at that trazodone study specifically, it's not that trazodone stopped working. It was after 2 weeks, placebo caught up to trazodone. Because the placebo group keeps getting better and better and better, because who completes the trial? Somebody who thinks they got the active agent. And that's what's happening. That's why you'll see people on placebo complaining of hangovers. But also this is a clinical point, because we're clinicians. That also means that whenever you prescribe anything, somebody says, does it have any side effects? Am I going to be hungover? Well, the answer is no, not compared to placebo. But placebo gives a hangover. So it's not fair to tell that to the patient. Because then if they feel anything the next morning, they're going to think, oh, I knew I was sensitive, and I'm going to take half this time. I'm going to do it differently. Instead, you tell them that you might have some grogginess in the morning. Even placebo does it, you tell them, because you're catching up on sleep. But that effect will probably go off after 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 mornings. And if it persists, then let me know. Then patients know, okay, this is temporary, and they can understand that. It's all about expectations. When it comes to sleep, it's all about expectations. Know what to expect. So what works for insomnia, these days we don't prescribe medication as much as we used to. I used to prescribe a fair amount of medication, I rarely do, because now we have something better. We just get to the root issue why they can't sleep to begin with. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which is predicated on the concept that people behave a certain way based on their past experiences in life, which make them think a certain way. And usually somebody with insomnia is trapped in misconceptions. There's a bunch of misconceptions that insomniacs have. The more logical you are, the more analytical you are, and the way you deal with your sleep, the more you're going to screw it up. The right approach to sleep is counterintuitive. This is a thinker's condition. People who don't care don't get insomnia. You have to be a thinker to be an insomniac. And in Silicon Valley, where I work, we have lots of insomniacs. There's a lot of it there. So what we try to do is identify these misconceptions. A typical one, for example, if I can't sleep, I should rest. But I already told you sleeping and resting is not the same thing. Or, when do you wake up? It depends what time I fall asleep. What could be more logical? I wake up depending on when I fall asleep. But the brain's wake-up system is different than the homeostatic drive for sleep. The circadian system is trying to predict dawn and dusk. And what that system is trying to do is no matter how much you slept, it's going to keep you try to wake up around the same time the next day. And if you have variable wake-up times, that system gets dampened and gets weakened. It's not as robust. You want to have the same wake-up time as much as possible. So we lock in people's wake-up time. That's how we do it. So anyway, we try to find out these misconceptions. I can't sleep without my eye mask. So I can't sleep without X or Y. All these conditions will arise. One thing you'll see about people with insomnia is insomniacs do not sleep with other insomniacs. You get one insomniac per couple, okay? One light sleeper per couple. So whenever you start a relationship, take on the mantle of the deep sleeper if you can. Okay, because that's what happens is whenever you meet an insomniac, you talk with them about their insomnia, you can almost, not always, but almost always, their bed partner sleeps really, really well. Why? Because they have you. They don't have to worry about a burglar or somebody breaking in. They have you. Okay? Those of you who are parents, the difference between you as a couple, early on, you go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, that's all nice and fun. But later, as the couple spends more time together, the difference will become more marked between you guys. Let's say you start a family, right? The one who's a deep sleeper, if they hear the baby cry, what do? When they wake up to the baby cry, they slam their eyes as fast as they can, slam them shut and pretend they're sleeping and wait, right? How many of you done that? Gentlemen, anybody of you done that? Pretended you were sleeping? I heard the baby cry, pretend you're sleeping, admit it, you did it, right? So then you close your eyes and pretend you're sleeping. The one who's the so-called light sleeper knows the bum's not getting up, so I have to sleep even lighter to take care of the problem. And becomes more marked over time. It's reality, it's how we are. You got to think about the entire family when you try to evaluate somebody's sleep. Behavioral techniques, I'm not sure if we're going to have time for it. But if we have time, I'll dig into this more fully. But I don't want to, but this by itself would take 45 minutes at a minimum. But cognitive behavioral therapy is done over several weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. There's an online version of it. So you can say, oh, there's nobody in our community who does it. Hogwash. No, you can do it online. There are apps for it now. In fact, during the pandemic, some of the major app makers for this were doing it for free. A lot of people suffered with poor sleep in the pandemic. But cognitive behavioral therapy works. These are known techniques, and I'm happy to discuss them with you if we have a little bit more time. But one is switch gears. Sleeping should be silent. This is a cardiovascular conference after all, and we cannot ignore sleep apnea. Sleeping should be silent. I like the silence in the room right now, so nobody's asleep yet. Nobody's snoring yet. Sleeping should be silent. There's no such thing as normal snoring. All snoring is turbulent airflow. All snoring is obstructive airflow. You may have occasional snoring because you have a cold or something, but routine snoring, always abnormal. No such thing as normal snoring. You should not snore. Men tend to get sleep apnea at an earlier age of life. Women tend to get sleep apnea the same prevalence as men after menopause. The shift in hormones will lead to changes in the way we breathe that will lead to sleep apnea. So you see lots of thin women with sleep apnea if you look for it. You cannot assume they're all overweight middle-aged men. Thin women will have sleep apnea too. It depends on their anatomy. Sleep apnea, the sleep studies is the lack of breathing, how we think about it. It's actually an interesting condition in the sense that the brain says, I'd rather sleep than breathe. That's what's happening in sleep apnea. You are sleeping despite not breathing. Think how fundamentally important that is to breathe. And you said, I'd rather sleep than breathe. And that's what the brain is doing. Their first descriptions of sleep apnea, people always go back to the Pickwickian syndrome. It was actually in a child. If you snore, your kids are going to snore. And if your kids snore, you're probably snoring too. I still haven't met a single mom, a single wife, actually, that was wrong. A lot of guys come to me and says, my wife claims I snore. Their wives are batting 1,000. I've not seen a single woman wrong yet about their bed partner. If you say your partner snores, they snore. Why would they make it up? And the guy says the same thing. Oh, she just needs earplugs. No, she doesn't. She just saved your life. Go home and kiss her. Thank her. Okay? And there's all kinds of couples, all kinds of situations. I'm just speaking in general terms. But the original description of sleep apnea is in a child. Pickwicking syndrome. And it's related to the tongue being in the wrong position. The biggest thing in our throats is our tongue. And normally when you are developing as a child, the tongue should fit the roof of your mouth. Look at a baby's tongue. That little tiny muscle is so powerful, so strong. It's expressing milk. That's a big thing that the tongue can do. That tiny little tongue does a lot. The tongue should fit into the roof of the mouth. Babies are obligate nose breathers, by the way. Babies cannot breathe through their mouths. A newborn can suck milk and keep breathing because the air goes through their nose. The epiglottis in a different location. Babies cannot breathe. When a baby gets their nose plugged, they go berserk. You've seen that, right? They simply can't open their mouths. A newborn cannot breathe through their mouth. They're just physiologically not unable to do so. So the tongue is a big muscle, goes into the roof of the mouth. The roof of the mouth is cartilage. It's nice and soft. It's putty. As the tongue grows, it makes space for itself. And then later in life, fully shaped, the tongue fits into the roof of the mouth. The tongue is wet. Roof of the mouth is wet. When you're sleeping on your back, the tongue stays in position. It's held in place. Beautiful. But what happens if you have allergies or you're a mouth breather? Tongue's out of position, will grow and not make any space for itself. So you want to spot sleep apnea, look in somebody's mouth, ask them to stick out their tongue. You can do it to each other right now if you like, okay? And just seriously, look in each other's mouth and see if the tongue is wider than the space above it. If they stick out their tongue, you see little crescent marks of the teeth on the edges? The tongue's too wide. It's not that they have a wide tongue. Roof of the mouth is narrow. Those same people will tell you that they had to have teeth removed, wisdom teeth came out. The shape of the face is more oval, less round. You see people, babies' pictures, how the face began round and became oval over time, became elongated because they were mouth breathers. And if you sleep with the mouth open, your face grows in that plane. This high arch palate, I'm trying to show you that. The lower teeth will be very overlapping, crowded. It's another thing you'll spot, even within sleep apneics. It's been around for a long time. This is 1917, over 100 years ago. Photo from a school. And the quote there, you won't be able to read the quote, so I'll read it to you. Mouth breathing means adenoids. Adenoids means deadened intellect. They were telling you, if you are a mouth-breathing kid, you weren't smart. They've observed that for a long time. To this day, we want to generalize somebody not being bright. What do we say? Duh. Mouth breathing. Where's that coming from? Mouth breathers are thought not to be smart people. Okay, that's often people will say this, and this comes from a long time ago. Look at all these kids with mouth breathing, long faces. Look at these kids, so an adenoidal face. Ears and throat surgeons recognize this immediately. And this is one of the reasons people advocated taking out tonsils over 100 years ago as a routine treatment. And they were taking them out because they knew that the kids weren't doing well in school. Sleep apnea can kill you. Let there be no doubt, sleep apnea can kill you. There's a death certificate, 1977, Santa Clara County, where I live. There's a blow-up of it, and you can see, the person says here, possible acute right ventricular failure, extreme obesity associated cardiomegaly, secondary to Pickwickian syndrome. Death certificate, somebody with sleep apnea. With the pandemic, sleep had some challenges. I'm actually the president of California Sleep Society, and so I got a sense of what was happening in our state. Sleep labs were shutting down because we couldn't do sleep studies. Sleep techs were unemployed. One sleep lab laid off 100 sleep techs in Southern California. So it's a big deal. It really hit us hard. I've been grateful I have a job. I really feel that way. I don't know how you guys feel, but I felt grateful to have a paycheck during the pandemic. A lot of people did not have them, especially clinicians, friends of my colleagues, had to shut down their practices. So always the joke is always like, the academicians make less money than the private practice guys, and then the private practice, but then we do have more stability in academia, so I got lucky. I was able to do teaching and other things, and I kept my job, so I was grateful. But what we pivoted to was more home sleep testing. And we switched from the traditional polysomnogram with all the wires in the head to home sleep testing to disposable systems. Because the fear we had was if we had to use a home test that was reusable, we'd have to have it cleaned between patients, wait for 3 days. So the decision was made to go with disposable systems. That's what we're using. There's a lot of sleep labs are doing that. So it's pretty much a sleep study wrapped around the wrist, pretty much. So that's what we're currently using, one of these systems. A lot of other sleep labs are doing the same thing. Now we're back to doing in-lab studies. But when the pandemic hit, remember this was the dark days. Remember you going to Costco and seeing those empty pallets in the back of the store. In supermarkets with like missing meat and all that. Remember the empty shelves? This was happening in sleep too. One of the things that was happening was in the first cases in the United States was in Seattle. Remember in Seattle? It was where it began. And there was the nursing homes. And they said that the spread was from CPAP machines. The CPAP machines were spreading, because you had these people like in a nursing home. They weren't going anywhere. They were laying there. But they had this turbo attached to their faces, shooting out whatever they were breathing to the entire group. So there was a whole fear of how CPAP was an open system and spreading the virus to people. So if you were suspected of having COVID and had CPAP, you had to isolate yourself. Those are all the things that were happening in our field. Treatments for sleep apnea. CPAP is still the mainstay. We do a conservative treatments, people sleeping on their sides. They're now positional devices that are being sold. Mouthpieces made by dentists, surgery, and so the different miscellaneous treatments. But I'm going to go over a couple of things with you guys. First off, we need your help. This just happened in our field. There's a government agency called the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, which just released a draft of a paper which said that the evidence is not there to support the paying for CPAP machines by the government. This just happened. So if any of you have ever had a patient tell you they got better on CPAP, right? What happened was when they did the analysis, they excluded severe symptomatic patients. So they're saying, well, the evidence is not there, and they're asking for public comments. So this is happening right now. Like this morning, I was dealing with this because they're trying to get folks to just write letters to the government saying, hey, the CPAPs work, and they need to hear from patients. Because hearing from us, sleep doctors are self-serving. But that's what's happening right now in our field, where people are saying that CPAP doesn't work. So we're going to go back to days of shaking people, or people are going to buy their CPAPs for cash. What would that do? So that's happening right now. And in part, it's this kind of circular argument because sleep research is underfunded. And then a different government agency says, well, the research quality you have is poor quality, but you've not funded the research. And that's the problem we're having. Or they do meta-analysis where they mix weak studies or intention to treat studies, not with fully completed studies. I had a fellow many years ago, 10 years ago maybe, and she had done, she was a cardiologist rotating, doing a sleep fellowship. And she was aghast at how poor the research was in sleep compared to how good the quality of the sleep research was in cardiology. You guys have much, much better research in cardiology than we have in sleep. It's just better research, more years of doing it. It's an older field, it's a more established field. So we pale in comparison to what cardiologists do as far as the quality of the research. But also in part it's because, you know, when you treat somebody's blood pressure, you got to measure it. When I put somebody in CPAP, I just get high fives and people are happy. You saved my marriage, I'm happy. It's a very different attitude, I think. People say things to us, right? Patients may not come to you with that immediate feedback that we get getting somebody to sleep better. Something novel, again, this is an update for 2021 of sleep medicine, something to know. This happens to us about every 5 or 6 years, and it's happening to us this year. New CPAP machines are being released. So the product cycle for CPAP machines is about every 5 years, 6 years, machines come out. The current machines that we've been using now, the ones I've been prescribing all of last week, pretty much, were the same ones I've been prescribing for the last 6 years. Because these companies, there's two main vendors, Respironics and ResMed. Again, I have no financial connection to them. They also make ventilators, so they've been kind of focused on making ventilators and other things like that. Plus, there's been issues with supply, but they're overdue and they're going to release new machines. So in April 9th, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, Respironics released a new machine, and it's that little one over there. It's called the DreamStation 2. How do you know new machines are coming out? If you watch online, you watch the old models drop in price real fast. It's like shopping, okay? If you go online and shop, because there's a whole cash market. So I just made this slide this morning. I just went to one of the main vendors of CPAP online. So I just did a screenshot, and I cropped it so it wouldn't show the brands. But that white one over there is actually on display. If you walk the hallway, the exhibit hall, if they're not gone, what they're showing you is that white one over there. The price dropped to $489 this morning. Why? Because it's old inventory. The new one is this one. And what's different about the new one? Smaller and quieter. That's what people want with CPAP, smaller and quieter. So the new one is out. Why am I telling you this? Because if you have a patient who's about to start CPAP, this happens every 5 years. When you write the prescription for the machine, you go get the machine, they'll give you the machine. watch them get the old inventory. Make sure you let your patient know, don't get the white one this year, get this one. Show them what it looks like. They're going to leave with the old inventory. And you go, what's the big deal? It's just 1 year. No, the product cycle is about 5 to 6 years. So if they end up with the old machine, the insurance says you got to keep that machine for 5 years. Now they're dealing with a machine that's 10 years old technology-wise. Don't do that to your patients, right? Let them sell the old machines to somebody else, okay? But this is what's happening. So defend your patients, be an advocate for them. The other thing that's kind of cool is now we have pacemakers for the tongue. There's one of the exhibits I noticed was pacemakers. And the same idea now is available for the tongue. There's a pacemaker for the tongue. It's an implantable device, goes under the skin, on the right side, not the left. Go under here. But what they are pacing is the hypoglossal nerve. The nerve that goes on the tongue. I told you earlier, the biggest thing taking up space in our throats is our tongue. If I want to snore, right? I noticed that none of you did the thing I asked you to do, to stick out your tongues at your partner. Maybe we do that after, if we had a happy hour or something afterwards, we do that, okay? Let's look at each other's palates and tongues. Look at mine. You'll see, we'll do that later, okay? But the thing is to move the tongue forward. Of course, you can have obstruction at other levels. You can have a broken nose, septal deviation, turbinate hypertrophy, a lot of reasons you may have sleep apnea. But there's a subpopulation that the reason that they have sleep apnea is because their tongue is sliding backwards. And what this device will do is it gets tunneled through and goes underneath, through the neck to the hypoglossal nerve, and you turn it on when you go to sleep, and it just moves the tongue forward with every breath. So one wire synchronizes to your ribs, the other one to your tongue, and then as you're breathing, it moves the tongue forward. So all night long, you're pushing your tongue out. But that takes care of your sleep apnea for some people. It's indicated people who have failed CPAP. A good measure whether something is a valid treatment or not in general for anything is does Medicare pay for it? Medicare pays for this. So that you know that the science is there. Medicare pays for it. That's another way of thinking about it, right? If you treatments that are cash only, you kind of suspect. Medicare covers it, it goes, oh, good, right? I'll go for it. That's one of them. So can sleepy students learn? I want to just change gears again. What are we doing for time? Oh, should I stop talking and keep going? So what's not one? Am I over time already? Okay. So one of the things I've been doing, I work with 4 different nonprofits. I volunteer for 4 nonprofits, and all of them are supporting delaying school start times. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that. One of the things I've been doing since I saw you last was I've been going to Sacramento and testifying on behalf of the bill to delay school start time. So on October 2019, California became the only state in the country to have a law specifically to protect the sleep of children. First one. And specifically, it was to make high schools and junior high schools start later. You cannot mandate a teenager showing up for school, for high school, before 8:30 in the morning, except rural districts. So this is the law. It goes into effect in 2022. That's a California law that's coming up. There's a 0 period, there are exceptions to it, but this is a real thing. In California, first state in the nation. Other countries observe what we're doing. Other states want to choose something similar. But getting a law passed is not that easy. I don't know if any of you tried to get a law made. The opposition, because to me, when I got involved in this, I just thought it was a health policy issue. But it really turns out to be an education policy thing, and the opposition viewed it as an invasion of their local control. So the school have autonomy. Who should make the decision about what's best for time to school to start? And we said, well, schools don't have individual lead levels in the paint, right? Why do you have to have individual start times? Because there's a science behind this. And what really swayed people about this was the data on suicide, mental health issues. Most common cause of death of teenagers is car accidents. Second is suicide. And both suicide and car accidents decreased whenever they've changed school start times. There's been improvements in mental health. So this is something that I was working on, so I'm just trying to update you guys on this. That's the senator who actually sponsored the bill. And never feel like you can't do something, that you can't make a difference. All this began, this was a 3-year effort, because one lady, one mom, wrote an opinion piece in a newspaper column about the importance of sleep and delaying school start times. He happened to read it. And he's been very much an advocate for mental health issues, because he's talking publicly about his brother who committed suicide. So when he saw this, he said, well, let me just do this and introduce the bill. And this whirlwind of issues came about because school administrators and teachers union opposed the bill. So we had to go up against the strongest union in the state of California with 0 fundraising. So the first time we did it, And I learned politics is a lot harder than science when doing this. It got vetoed by Governor Brown. Governor Brown, this is the veto letter. When they veto a bill, and it says that one size fits all, and the local elected officials should be doing this. But after years, and all we pretty much had in Sacramento was a bunch of moms. There were a couple of men, but mostly it was moms who were pissed off at their kids having to get up so early, and walking up and down the halls of Sacramento, handing out PDFs of scientific articles that got it going. That was the momentum of these mothers, this group of parents. And the California PTA got behind it. School nurses got behind it. And guess who got behind it too? Law enforcement. Why? Juvenile crime peaks after school is out. That's when the kids are unsupervised. And whenever they've delayed school start times in other jurisdictions, the kids get out of school a little bit later. And there's a drop in juvenile crime. So enough things happened that it finally got turned into law. So we became the first state without any fundraising at all to get a law passed. And that's what we're doing right now. So now we have to deal with the implementation. That's news. Thank you. Cool. Actually, when I started doing it, I thought people were going to throw rocks through my window. But anyway, I just want to finish by telling you that sleep is the most powerful and natural form of self-care that we have. I'm going to be crass and tell you I wrote a book, so if you want to read more about sleep, you can. I brought a copy of it here, so you can see what it looks like. It's not a thick book. It'll take you a few hours to read, so I have a book out if you guys want to read more about sleep. Will it put you to sleep? Yeah, sure. Of course it will. It has put people to sleep. It has put people to sleep. People have written to me, telling me that they sleep better after they read it. Yes, of course. Anyway, that's that. So I wish you all a good night tonight and every night, and time for questions, I guess. We're doing okay. Thank you, Dr. Khan. Thank you for having me.